So Ali, do you want to go ahead and explain your issue? And then if you want, you can post it in the, I'll post it in the Gitter channel and you can post it in the chat. So whoever can access it from different ways can look at the issue too.
All right, yeah, so I can post the main issue first before I start. Just give me a second.
Let's see if I see it.
Yeah, I just posted it in the Gitter channel too, so it's the GitHub issue we're retracting.
Yeah. Verifying my this thing, you know.
All right. So, sorry.
Okay, it's confirmed. I don't see it, so it's okay. So nothing unexpected is happening.
All right, great. So basically, to give you some context, VS Code has two ways of editing settings. One is from settings.json, where you can just go edit JSON in the settings.json file and edit the settings. The other way is to use the settings GUI, and it mostly provides editing very basic settings. So like strings, numbers, and like enums, so that is rendered as dropdowns. So things like that. But what it doesn't support right now is editing object settings, which a lot of extension authors contribute in their settings. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make object settings readable or readable and editable using the settings GUI. So one example of this setting would be the files.associations setting. So in this setting, it's an object where the keys are simply glob patterns of the files that we're matching, and the value of a key is the language to use for the files matching that glob pattern.
Can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Is the quick suggestion like this thing to configure quick suggestions one of the examples of object settings, because it has sub keys, Boolean sub keys actually?
Quick suggestions. I think I don't remember it being a part of this, but I can look into it. Can you tell me what the key of the setting is?
I would have to find it actually, but it's like the editor quick suggestions. Where is this?
Okay. It's a setting. It's an object type setting that has key values that are Booleans.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. It's about this. Yes. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand what are the object settings. So that's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's also going to be a part of it. It's kind of like very work in progress right now. So, but we're hoping to get it released for the next in the next month. But yeah, this is going to be a part of it. So mainly the objects which are non-nested, so that means all the values are either strings or numbers or booleans, are going to be a part of this project. And so I just wanted to get more feedback about like what we can, what would you expect from a setting like this, and basically just that.
So I think I'm trying to understand this myself as well. I've had a little bit of going into the settings just through, not directly into the JSON file, but through the editor. But is the settings themselves, is it just one very large flat JSON file with name value pairs, or is it broken up into where components have their own sub objects within a JSON file? And are these? Because I'm trying to understand what it is. What does it mean by object? I would think within a JSON file, if I were writing a plugin and I have settings for that plugin, it might be, the tag name is my setting, my plugin name, and then that expands some sub JSON component. Just like a file system, just like a directory structure or something. Is that what we're talking about, or?
So basically something like that. In a way, it's kind of like a directory structure, but it's not gonna unlike a directory structure, it's not gonna expand into something else. And since we're only dealing with non-nested objects, we're not gonna go into some other view to edit those. They're all going to be rendered as key value, a list of key value pairs, for example.
So instead of going in, instead of having a setting where you have to edit it in settings.json, you can continue to edit it from the UI in a list of key value pairs.
Mm-hmm.
So do you use the settings.json or the settings UI when you go into your VS Code settings?
I usually use the UI. I haven't done a lot. I've changed preferences for preview mode and a few other things. But and I believe it was the initial call where you guys discussed the settings navigation and I was listening to that and I was thinking, wow, I'd like to say some things. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I guess it wasn't the most intuitive experience I had, and I was thinking of settings could be more modularized with subcomponents for certain areas, as opposed to what it felt like just navigating a flat kind of a flat file and not really knowing kind of where to go and not having the ability to say navigate it like a traditional Explorer experience, where I might go in a left panel and expand, find an object, expand that, find its properties or its sub objects, expand those, find the one I want, and just hit enter and then tab over and there's the setting, and there are the options for whether it's Boolean or some enum or whatever. And that seems like like a smooth, that could be a pretty smooth interaction, but maybe that would require restructuring the settings file, and that's probably non-trivial. But then I believe one of the questions from last time was, how do you get back to the navigation of the settings? If it were a traditional kind of Explorer, I find the one I want, I hit enter, I tab over, then I tab back, and I'm right back into the Explorer. But for say developers adding settings and plugins, it just seems to me, for consistency, I guess making it the same as it currently is, because would you consider that there are already objects in the settings that are being edited via the UI, and they're just done the way that they're done the way that they're done?
Mm-hmm. I think Rob has more context about the last call. So he
Yeah,
might
we
be
have
able to chime in.
we had a few ideas that came out of the last call, and I think we'd like to prototype those at some point. Like, I mean, yeah, just like you said, you know, one big issue is that you kind of get lost in this massive flat list, and that you can't tell like when do you cross the boundary from one category of setting to another category of settings, and how do you navigate back from the giant list of settings to the tree of categories. And yeah, I get it's a totally confusing experience. And then regarding the new object setting type that Adi is talking about, I think one thing we're kind of stuck on is exactly what does a screen reader user expect when they're looking at this this object setting, which is going to have like a list of keys and then a list of values associated with those keys.
So would an object and is this primarily targeting plugin writers so they can provide their own settings into the?
Well, we have settings of this type of.
They already do, yeah. Quick suggestion is an example that it's not even an extension. It's like in core, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, file source associations is one example, and then as you mentioned, editor.quicksuggestions would be another example. And then there are a lot of object settings exposed in the Go extension as well.
I'm wondering if, because an object is like you want to expose objects that have just key values, no nested objects inside, but most of them, I'm not sure if most of them have like what I wanted to say, if most of them have specified keys like quick suggestions, or I'm not sure what file associations contain, because I have never tried to modify this, if they are like objects that can contain any number of keys, because
yeah, that's a good point. So the way I was thinking about it was, if an object has all the keys are predefined and no new keys can be added to it, then we just like display the keys and values in somewhat of a tabular format, and if more keys can be added to it, we can just have like an add button at the bottom of the table, and then in that case you can input any value for the key that you want. It's basically any string, and then based on that string you can input a value.
Well, in the case of, let's call them fixed objects, I don't know how to name them, because it's for me it's a different category of object settings. Because for like objects where you can dynamic objects where you can add anything, then it's okay to have it as a form of table. But for fixed objects, especially that they can't be arbitrarily nested, I'm not sure if it shouldn't be transparent from the user's point of view, more or less. Like, I would prefer to see, for example, it's of course personal, quick suggestions and quick suggestions, strings, quick suggestions, something else. I'm not sure. I don't remember how it looked like, and like something like more like if it would be displayed, at least from the screen reader's point of view, as like I shouldn't have any difference in navigation because this is an object, because this object has fixed set of keys that actually for like function as settings. It could as well be its own settings, yeah. Quick suggestions dot something, and it would work the same from my perspective. I'm not sure if you get what I want to say.
So it kind of sounds like. Oh.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sum up really quick. It sounds like you're expecting that the key value entries of like an object type setting are sort of expanded out into the list of settings in general, right? As you're navigating through setting, one setting, then you get to this object type setting and you're going through the keys of that setting. It
at least for the fixed, like the settings, like quick suggestions, I think it should be like this. It shouldn't be like a special kind of something that is, because it's the object structure is more or less something like an internal implementation detail. Not so much here because we can directly edit the JSON, but if we couldn't, it would be an internal implementation detail. But in case of those more like flexible objects, a table with key values is okay for me. You can't do it otherwise, I think.
So is this, sorry if I'm still trying to, I do still try to visualize things. And it sounds like if you're navigating down the settings on, I guess what I would think of as the right panel, that's got the, once I've navigated down the tree on the left panel and found something and gone to the right panel, and I'm navigating through there, and I'm just hitting, I guess, key values in the flat file. Then I hit an object, and then I can potentially expand that object within the right panel and navigate just within that object in the right panel. Is that what we're considering?
Yeah, something like that. So essentially, as you said, you can scroll down in the right panel, and once you hit an object, then maybe like you hit something like a table, and then you can use your arrow keys to navigate within this table.
If I can add something to this, if I understand correctly, so there are settings in the left panel that can be collapsed and expanded. And then once you expand the left panel settings, there are more settings in the right panel, which are object settings, which could again be expanded. So is that correct?
The left panel basically has like the type. So let's say one of the items in the left panel is editor. So once you click on that, all the settings related to the editor will be expanded.
Categories, yeah.
Right.
And then some of these settings are like basically numbers or strings, and then some of these settings may further be objects.
Got it.
Yeah.
So one potential solution might be that if a setting is an object, how about including that in the left tree view itself, so that it's clear to the user that, okay, the left tree view, the left, as we are calling it, the left pane, is a set of things that can be collapsed or expanded, and the right pane is a flat structure where settings for an object that is selected in the left pane can be edited. Because I worry that when if there are like, other kinds of expandable settings, if there is nesting in the right pane too, it might confuse a user as to what is going on. Again, this depends on, how frequently a user might interact with one of these features. Like, for example, if you're just trying to change something super basic, if they have to go through all of this, it might just increase the learning curve so much so that the settings editor will might still remain, complicated to navigate, which is what I'm trying to kind of, suggest avoiding while improving object support. So for a particular setting, if there are objects, there are multiple level hierarchies, can we kind of somehow announce, convey to the user that selecting the main category will give you all the flat, settings that there are, and expanding that will give you each object where you can go and edit these settings, right? And if there are nested objects, those will also be conveyed there in the left panel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a great idea. We hadn't really thought of that. So yeah.
So to make sure I understand, so you're basically suggesting that like the right pane should always be just sort of a flat list, either of like the contents of a object type setting or other flat settings, and then So then you don't have any sort of nested data structure on the right side, and the left side is where the nested data structure is, right? That's where you have your hierarchy of categories and object type settings, which sort of appear as like a header or another entry in that list.
Yeah,
really
or like a tree view, collapsible tree view. I don't remember what it is because I always was confused with the settings editor and haven't gone there recently. But yeah, if it's a tree view, having something like collapsible, indicating that this can be expanded might indicate to the user that, oh, there are like, other things that you could do. I'm trying to kind of suggest mirroring the file explorer, Windows Explorer-ish view, right? Where if you select a folder and if you go to the right side, you have files in it, files of that folder. But if you expand that folder, you can also see other folders, right? This is kind of the thing that I'm trying to replicate,
So
mirror.
It makes sense to me. I'm not sure how it would look like, but it would have to be implemented to see. Yeah? But I think it's.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that as well. It's when I was talking about the Explorer view, I think that would be at the very least, a model that people are probably familiar with. I have a question though: does the UI currently support any type of object navigation? Is there anything in the UI that on the right panel, say, expands, or is it currently that everything is, excuse me, just a flat list of key value pairs?
Yeah, if you're using the latest insiders, or not even the latest, like maybe a couple days old insiders, then you can navigate to files.associations, and that is rendered on the settings GUI as an object setting. So you can try that out. It's not very good right now, but yeah, we're always looking for feedback.
Yeah, and that's expanded. That object is expanded on the right side for navigation, but say on the left panel, there's not a like a little plus with the collapsed or expanded. So you can go navigate the left, just like sorry, I don't know who was speaking earlier, but like he was saying, the tree structure where say an object would be analogous to a directory, properties within a object would be analogous to files. Right? That doesn't exist right now. It's just if I hit an object in the right panel as I'm navigating through the properties, if I hit an object, then it expands in the right panel only. Is that how it currently works in the Insider?
I get yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we don't have that nesting on the left column. No, in the sense that it doesn't really expand on the right column either. It's just all of the keys, like you don't have to press a button to expand it. It's just rendered like right there.
So then it just looks like I'm continuing to navigate through a flat file.
So it's flat, yeah. It's
it's flat.
It's
yeah.
flat.
Yeah.
Does it say like object name dot property?
Yeah, for things like file association, it's not.
Yeah.
It's probably not good. Especially that you may want to edit the key itself. I'm not sure if it's possible at the time. Like editing keys instead of adding a new one. Because in that kind of object, you can want to do it.
I see.
Edit.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It came up earlier as adding keys. I think adding keys, editing keys. It's kind of the same, or at least a similar problem. But are the properties, when you hit an object on the right side, are the properties, is it obvious that if I'm, say, navigating through a property, through an object, and I leave that object, and if I continue navigating and I'm now out of that object, is that obvious? Are the properties named in such a way that it's like object name dot property name?
I don't know if it is obvious, but like, I think it should be obvious in the sense that the whole tabular structure is actually just rendered under a particular uh, like setting. So as you tab away, you can just tab to the next setting. Um, and so I think in that sense, it might be clear that you have tabbed away from the object setting. But yeah, I have no idea what it is, what the experience is like for you guys. So maybe you can.
I missed the message. I
clear that
missed
up.
the message about whether the example with file associations is already present in insiders or not, because I could probably see what I can see, like what I see when trying to navigate there, because I have VS Code open at the time.
Yeah.
So
Do
where is it? It is available.
do you have the insiders or the
Yes,
stable
I
one?
have the insiders from, I'm not sure, Monday, Sunday.
I think that should be fine.
Okay, so if file associations are in the text editor group.
It should be in the commonly used section. If you just yeah.
Okay,
So if you
okay.
just yeah.
Yeah, just trying to make it faster because.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let me try.
I just want to say hi and sorry that I'm a bit late. Isidore here, I had another meeting, but please carry on.
I have a quick question while Miguel is navigating that. On the right side, don't I also use tabs to go between to tab through properties, or is it up and down arrow? I've forgotten.
On the right side, yeah, it's you can use tabs to go to the next visible item.
Okay. And then I use up and down arrow to, if it's say a Boolean or an enum or something, I use up and down arrow to select the value.
If it's a Boolean, then I think then you hit enter and then you can go up and down.
Then I edit. Okay.
But yeah,
So
if your expectation is to be like just hitting arrow keys, then we can note that down and look into it.
I was just curious because you mentioned somebody mentioned that as you're tabbing through, then you tab away from the object, that you would get some sort of indication. Because if the property names, if the object's not, I guess, part of the property name as I'm tabbing along, then I guess unless the screen reader says you're now leaving, you're now leaving the object, or you're now entering the object, I don't really know without say, unless the property names are being read out with the object name as well.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
So as if I have an object that's within the I guess going back to the left panel, right panel, right? I'm in the right panel. I'm just tabbing along through various properties, and I hit an object, and I hit tab. I guess it sounds like what's happening now is I'm just continuing. Now I'm I guess technically within an object, but it sounds like I'm still just tabbing through, and it's still kind of a flat file experience. And I'm hitting the properties of this object, but I don't. Like I say, if the properties are read out to me as object name dot property name, right? Then I know I'm in an object. If they're just read out to me as property name, then I don't really know unless I'm more familiar with that object and know that, this object has these property names.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, I think I saw it. So I assume you have you add items and you have it like a sort of a table where you can like edit them like this. Well, it's I don't have a real use for file associations at this time, so I can't say what it would look like in the future. But for that kind of object settings, it's okay for me in general. But like
Okay.
ideas about the categories in the left panel work for me too. So
Okay.
Okay. Adi, do you have any more questions, or like I think we got some of the main points about what the setting name should read, how to navigate through it, how to like see if it is an object setting, if you want to do something in the left pane as like a drop down.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I don't really have any other questions. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, cool. Izzy, do you want to talk about debugging?
Well, only if, well, I'm not sure because I didn't really recruit users for this. So I'm not sure if anybody who's on the call actually uses debugging in VS Code. And if they do, would they like to provide some feedback?
I tried using debugging a bit. This is Venkatesh. I tried using debugging a bit, not to a minimum, to a large extent, but one thing that I kind of found confusing, actually just today morning, in fact, is to get to the focus problems view. Like, for example, first thing, right? Yes, pressing F8 and Shift F8 kind of navigates you through errors on your code. But if I wanted to just go to the focus problems view and look at the entire set of code base, errors in my code base, I'm not sure if there's a keyboard setting, keyboard shortcut to do that. I usually do Control
Shift M, I
Shift.
think it is.
Sorry?
I think it's Control Shift M to go to the problems view.
I see.
If it's what you are about.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And the other issue that I found myself was with navigating the console view. Again, this probably could be a learning curve issue as well, but my expectation when I go to the console view was to be able to read the console output, but it put me in an edit text, a multi-line edit text, I think, which was confusing, and I'm not sure how best to. The initial learning curve at least was pretty heavy with the debugging experience. Tried to mirror something that I would maybe ideally find in Visual Studio. Maybe that's a misaligned expectation, but yeah, that's some perspective that I have on debugging, if that helps.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the feedback. Yeah, I think the learning curve is probably steep, not only with screen readers, but I think in general for debugging. So the shortcut, I think somebody already mentioned for the problems view, so you can just use that to get the problems view. You already know this F8, Shift F8, that's sort of like inline navigation of problems. And as for the console, I think you're talking about the debug console, correct? Not the terminal.
No, not the terminal.
Yes. Yeah. So the debug console, like all editors, sort of like eats up this tab key. You have to first press. I think it's probably somebody on the calls knows this. You first have to press a shortcut to trigger this mode that you can use tab to move focus out of the editor, or you can just, or you can just.
I don't remember if just doing Shift Tab didn't work. I mean, maybe it even did, because
Yes.
I was never locked into this field. I was just testing the debugger. I was not really debugging. Mostly the bugs I had were .NET Core bugs, not VS Code bugs, I think. But I was not stuck in this field, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, the thing is, because this, let's call it the input box of this debug console, that's also actually an editor under the hood. So you have to get into this mode that the tab moves focus, and then you can say Shift Tab to move to read what's the actual output. But I do agree it's a bit steep to figure that out. I'm not sure how obvious it is that this small thing is also an editor, and that you also have to loosen this tab key to move focus. So, but it should work. It should work. But it's yeah, we can maybe improve that to make it more obvious.
Yeah. That's one thing. And the other thing is, how about, I don't know, on the terminal, for example, we have this whole like control up, navigation that is supported, right? Would
Correct.
something like that, does it make sense to replicate something like that? Or do you think it might unnecessarily make it complicated again? Like, it's not evident. Again, the control up is not evident if you weren't a VS Code user, right? And I don't know if it's
if I can't test things, because maybe I would be able to see how it looks like in the Linux.
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to say. Well, I usually really like consistency, like across UX, and if the terminal experience, I think it's nice that this control up that you can just use that to read output, and I actually like that feature. But I don't use it, so I trust you better. But if that works well for the terminal, we should consider adding it also in the debug console. When I say we, I mean I, because I'm actually the owner of it. So I can look into it to see how feasible it is that we do this same navigation, that the control up and down, you can also navigate. So I like that idea. I will create an issue after this meeting, and then I can ping you with the issue, and then we can take it from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can provide more. And it's also like, it would be interesting to see what other people think as well, right? Because the control up was not very evident for me, at least initially. The last call kind of was useful in that it educated me about that feature. But yes.
So it's always this balance. I'm not sure what Daniel, so my colleague who does the terminal, I'm not sure if he adds this in the area label of the terminal somewhere. I think we wanted to do this, that somehow it gets read that you should use control up and down, because it's not so obvious, right? It should be read. And then we wanted to add it to the area label. I'm not sure if he did it, but in case he didn't, we can create an issue and we can look into it to also make this more discoverable, since this is not standard behavior outside of VS Code. And then if everybody likes it, how terminal is behaving, we can ask our community on Gitter. We can also ping people on the issue. We can also try to do it in the debug console, this control up and down.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Great feedback.
So my understanding of the control up and down, which was also learned from the last, just listening to the last meeting, is that you have to use control up down arrows because it's a list of items as opposed to, I don't know if it's just an edit box. And with that effect, if I have a multi-line, say I'm in the debug terminal, and I want to display the value of something, and it's multi-line, if I type the variable to be displayed, and then I believe Shift Tab did work for me. I think it's Control M that eats or doesn't eat the tab. When I was in the edit field for the debug terminal, but I may have already been in the mode where tab moves the cursor as opposed to inserts a tab. So maybe I just got lucky that Shift Tab worked and took me up to the display for the debug. But if that gets changed to where you have to use the control up down arrows, and I have multi-line, I have something multi-line, I want to cut and paste it, is that going to affect the ability to select multi-line? I haven't tried that in the other terminal.
So if we add this control up and down behavior in Debug Console, we would definitely not change the current behavior, since people got used to the shift tab thing, and that would remain the same. So we try not to break people. And
Well, I think the shift tab. Sorry, I think that's a different thing. Right, shift tabbing from the input. Right. So my understanding is there's an input area of the debug panel where I can, I guess, type a variable name or something if I'm in a breakpoint. And then I shift tab to get up to where it's being displayed. And I think I'm sorry, it's been a while since I've used this. But where it's being displayed, I thought I could just use the arrows without having to use the control. And in the other area, which I guess is the terminal or the console, it's there that I had to use the control up and down arrows. And my understanding was because those were two actually different components of where something was being displayed. I don't know if one is an edit box and one is a list box or whatever. But if the area in the debug panel where the display is, if that's changed to use control arrows as opposed to just arrowing around, would that affect the ability to say select a multi-line, out any kind of multi-line output? Could I still select across lines if that has become a list box as opposed to an edit box? And sorry if my terminology is completely off.
No, your terminology is good. So first of all, yes, there are two components. Debug Console uses one thing, the terminal uses the other. What you said, how the Debug Console currently behaves with the shift tab and the up and down moving, that will not change. So that will stay the same. What I'm just saying is that in order for people to discover this easier, that the control up and down would sort of like be an alias for this behavior, and it would behave the same as the up and down currently behave in the Debug Console.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
Ideally, both would work, but yeah, I have to look into it in the implementation. But yeah, I think it would sort of like just be an alias. Yeah, that's the right pronunciation. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Alias for the same thing.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, I did find once I and I've only been doing just kind of little pet projects, nothing very sophisticated. So I can't say I've got a lot of depth with the debugger, but once I did figure it out, it was, it was certainly usable. I haven't tried navigating, a complex call stack or anything like that, but the ability to hit a breakpoint, see what the values are of variables, that it seemed as if once I figured it out, it worked pretty well.
Awesome.
I thought it was. I'm realizing these days as I get more into screen readers and accessibility that just getting something to do what you want it to do is it's a good feeling. I guess once I get the muscle memory going, then I'm happy with that, I guess.
Awesome.
Okay, so I have a debugger running if anyone wants me to test something.
I had one question. In general, more so with debugging, because there are so many ways of doing things, right? Like when you hit a breakpoint, you might want to, go to the line of code. And for example, if you're building by chance, and if there are errors, you might want to, shift focus to the problems window directly. So again, on the one hand, I was wondering if it makes sense to now what I noticed is that the screen reader focus doesn't really leave the editor, which is great in many cases. On the other hand, does it make sense to kind of replicate a traditional desktop app behavior where if you are building and if there are errors, does it make sense to kind of get the focus to the the problems window? Again, I don't know how this conflicts with the W3C accessibility guidelines, where like changing focus is kind of, I think, not super encouraged. And also, like, if VS Code treats things like treats its whole UI like a web, does it adhere to WCAG guidelines, or there are things that are being done differently? But yeah, in general, does it make sense, especially in debugging, to get focused to the areas that matter the most when you're debugging?
Well, we try to do that, so we are not afraid of automatically switching focus if it intuitively makes sense, at least to us. So as for actual errors, what we currently do, just so we're on the same page, when you start debugging, we detect if there's errors in the project. If there are no errors, all is fine and dandy, and you're debugging. If there are errors, there's a big model dialog coming up, which steals focus since it's blocking, and it basically tells you, oh, there's errors. Do you still want to debug, or you want to stop, or you want to see the errors? And then if you say, oh, show me the errors, the focus should automatically switch to the problems view, and ideally that should be read out. If you say, if you don't care about errors, I want to debug, then obviously we don't show any of the errors. And hopefully that should just work. However, if you are debugging and some errors appear while you are debugging, we are not doing this hot reloading. I mean, it depends on the debug extension. So we will not automatically apply your changes. And we will not automatically tell you, oh, there's errors. We will only tell you when you stop debugging and start debugging again. Oh, there's errors. Do you want to see them? And that's the current experience.
I see. Got it.
As for changing focus, we change automatically. That we change focus not that often. Maybe if the breakpoint gets hit, the editor might get focus. And obviously, if it's user triggered, like if you go to the breakpoints view, you hit enter on a breakpoint, we switch the focus to the editor, we take you to where the breakpoint is. If you're on the call stack view, you press enter, we take you to where the call stack is, and we take the focus. And I think we're very careful with this focus because, because we really care about it.
Of course.
So, if it sucks somewhere that the focus is unexpected, let us know and we'll try to fix it.
Sure. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that I currently don't have any issues with, the way VS Code handles focus. I was just not sure if my suggestion was, the right one. So I was a little, skeptical about it. Hence, I talked about the guidelines and stuff. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Going back to the focus on the so when you hit a breakpoint, it drops you into the editor at the code of the breakpoint. I know there's been discussion in various places about hovering. What I used to just hover a mouse over something and it would tell me the value of that variable. At the time of the breakpoint. Is that if I navigate? So now I'm in the editor file. If I just arrow over to a variable, does the value of that variable, the current value of that variable, does that get automatically displayed and read out via the screen reader?
So currently, if you're not using the mouse, we have a special command that you trigger this hover. I think it's Command K, Command I. I'm not really sure, but it's F1 show hover or something.
Yes, just try it, and I see the empty parameters array, but I'm not sure if it's really displaying the thing or not.
And then if you trigger this hover via keyboard, we move focus to the hover such that the screen reader would read what's in the hover. If you use the mouse, we don't move the focus to the hover. Yeah.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. If it's a complex type, can I expand? Like if it's an object.
Yeah.
In the hover?
You should. you should be able to do everything. So ideally, this is how we designed it. The focus moves to the hover. Inside the hover is a tree. And wherever you use trees in VS Code, they're all the same. We use the same widget.
Okay.
And then you can use the regular up and down, left and right to navigate and to expand and collapse, and hopefully it should just work.
Okay. And then I just hit escape to get out of that?
Yes, that should also hopefully work.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
All right, and I think I want to be respectful of time, so I think this was a really good discussion about both settings and debugging. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We got some good ideas out of it. I think we can make a couple of issues on the GitHub repo and post both the notes and the recording of this later for people to see.
Well, thank you guys
Yeah.
very much for thank you for your commitment to making VS Code accessible. It's a great tool. They're really I switched over to Windows when I lost my site, just because I heard it was a much better environment for accessibility. I guess that could be a hot topic of debate, but I really appreciate what you guys and Microsoft are working on.
Yeah, and thank you for organizing these calls. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Good day.
Bye-bye.